Now more than ever, Lowe's knows you don't just want a low price, you want the lowest price. And with our lowest price guarantee, you can count on us for competitive prices on all your home improvement projects. If you find a qualifying lower price somewhere else on the same item, we'll match it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Price match applies to same item, current price at qualifying retailers. Exclusions and terms apply. Learn how we'll match price at lowes.com/lowest price guarantee.
Oh, I've got too many bills.
If you need funds, you can apply in minutes at cashnetusa.com and have the money in your account as soon as the same business day.
Okay, got it. Applying now.
They've been helping hardworking people cover emergency expenses since 2004.
Hey, look, I got it.
You've got this.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See cashnetusa.com for more details.
This is the Fun Belt Podcast, part of the Believe Network.
Hosts to Dusty Thibodeau of Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper of Powell Razor, and Shane Metlin of the Daily News Record.
I think it's potentially a very good week for the Sun Belt.
But I'm just kind of going off on a random rant. It's just frustrating. It's athletic calendar is winding down there, Shane. And Jeremy is still partying hardy in Montgomery, knowing that the Red Wolves actually made it into the Sun Belt Conference tournament. They might as well have a parade, raise a banner, cancel Christmas and everything else in between, right?
Is that where Jeremy is? I was under the impression he'd escaped the country. Maybe he was a wanted man or something like that. But
well, maybe it's because of what he did in Montgomery as to why he had to escape the country.
Yeah, I remember hearing some stories about a bowl game in Montgomery for the Harper boys. So yeah, I think he could find some trouble down there. I think
he could find trouble like standing still. I don't know how he does it. And Shane, when you go to New Orleans, you'll get to see him in rare form.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
For right now, though, it's baseball season. And where do we want to start, Shane? Do we want to talk about the two nationally seeded teams in the Sun Belt that are both hosting regionals? Or do we want to talk about the bid that got away?
I don't know. Are they kind of related conversations? Because it's like, do you celebrate the two hosts, which is something that I don't believe has happened for the Sun Belt, have two regional hosts at the same time. It's a great accomplishment. It puts you up there with some of the best leagues in the country. But yeah, you would have liked to have seen that third team get in to, truly be a multi-bid type of league and establish the depth in the conference. And that's a rough one for Troy, being one of the first four left out. They really looked like a lock a couple of weeks to go in the season, and it's a tough finish, especially when they did okay in the conference tournament. They get to the semifinals. You would have thought maybe that would have been enough, but yeah, to me, it's all one story.
The big question that I have for you, kind of coming into all of this, is this right here. Was Troy doomed when they were swept by Southern Miss to close out the season? Or was it that first round, opening round game that they dropped to Old Dominion that was kind of the nail in the coffin?
I would guess maybe it was the old ODU loss. Getting swept by Southern Miss, as we see where they're seated in this thing, is not anything to be necessarily ashamed of. You would have liked to have gotten one win in that series, at least if you're Troy and you're on the bubble, but I don't think that necessarily does you in. It's a combination of that and then following it up with a not great loss, even though they rebounded well. I mean, that's why you play double elimination tournaments in baseball, is because anything can happen in one game with your pitching and stuff like that. But I think it's a combination of that kind of like stretch, but it was, if you're going to say this is the nail in the coffin, I'd say it's the ODU loss.
Yeah, without a doubt. And by the way, the last time the Sun Belt had two regionals, 2022, when it was Georgia Southern and Southern Miss hosting regionals at their campus. Southern Miss advanced playing Old Miss and fell just short of advancing into from the Super Regional into the College World Series. It was crazy. 3 years ago. Where's time go, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was about the time I started coming on show with you guys. Because now that you're saying it, I remember we talked a little bit about that and Georgia Southern getting the host. I guess here's the question, though. If you're Keith Gill sitting in the Sunbelt offices there at the Superdome, do you prefer having two hosts and only two teams in? Or do you like it if it's one team hosting, maybe nobody hosting, but you're getting 3, 4, 5 teams into the tournament? Which is better for the conference right now?
Man, I think that's almost a draw, honestly, because if you're putting your 4 or 5 teams in, only 10 are making it really into the postseason, so to say. And so that's half your postseason eligible teams going into the postseason. How great would that be if that was the case in basketball, or if football had that getting into the playoff, which is a whole nother conversation that we'll stir that pot here shortly there, Shane. But yeah, I think that the more teams you have in, the better. With that said, though, you obviously don't want to have a JMU or Old Dominion traveling out to Corvallis or out to UCLA to kind of do the coast-to-coast game. You want to try to have it as regionalized as possible. And the only way you're kind of guaranteed that is if you can actually host those regional games.
Yeah, although, I will say, last year where there was multiple teams getting in, JMU goes down to Raleigh, not a bad drive. They had a pretty decent crowd there for that. So it can still work out for you. Yeah, if you get some Corvallis, good luck with everything regarding that. But I don't know. In some ways, I do think, I think you do want to have at least 3 teams from the Sun Belt in pretty much every year. I think that's kind of where Sun Belt baseball is, that 3 or 4 teams should be tournament teams. But it's not a bad consolation prize if these 2 teams can take advantage of being hosts. If they're in super regionals and they maybe sneak one into Omaha, then I think we forget pretty quickly that there weren't as many teams in the field this year.
Circling back to 2022, a quick correction. Southern Miss was still in Conference USA, so not a Sun Belt Conference team, but the conference did send 4 teams into the regionals that year: Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern, Louisiana Lafayette, and Texas State, all into the regional field.
Back so soon? Oh no, what happened?
A little incident at the dog park. We gotta head to the vet.
Oh, not again. These bills.
We can use CashNet USA. We can apply in minutes, get a fast decision, and have the money in the account as soon as the same business day. All right, Cheddar, back in the car.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See CashNetUSA.com for more details.
So let's break down where we are now. Coastal gets the number 13 seed. A lot of discussion there whether or not they should have been one of the top 8 that guarantees them the ability to host a super regional going forward. They draw Fairfield in the first round of the game. They will get the winner and or loser of the Florida-East Carolina matchup in that regional. Winner of that regional faces the Auburn champion for the super regional and a chance to go to Omaha. I like Coastal's chances, obviously, with Fairfield. But that's a tough draw either way, with East Carolina being a big regional draw for them. And, of course, Florida out of the SEC. Even a bad SEC program is going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I've seen ECU come up to some regionals up this way in Charlottesville and stuff, and they travel for baseball. That is a great baseball fan base. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of them down in Conway. So that's not an easy draw for Coastal. But, if you get out of your regional, then, you really do have a shot at, getting to Omaha, because I think that is a really good Coastal team. I think they can play with some of those, really solid but not necessarily spectacular SEC teams that are in the tournament, because they're, and seeded because of, the conference schedules they play. So yeah, not an easy regional draw for Coastal by any means, but yeah, you get through it and then you're battle tested and you're ready for that super.
The other regional host, number 16 Southern Miss, they get Columbia, and then the winner and or loser of the Alabama-Miami game, that regional paired with number 1 Vanderbilt in the Nashville regional. Once again, I like Southern Miss there against Columbia. I know Columbia was kind of a surprise team, but a team that they should still be able to pretty handily beat, especially right there in front of the Mustard Buzzard fans. But then that Alabama-Miami, I mean, that's some old school baseball rivalry stuff right there. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then if you can make it out of Hattiesburg to go to Nashville and face number 1 Vandy, that's a tough road to Omaha.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I do think they have a really good shot at getting out of their regional. Like, that home field advantage in Hattiesburg is real. Those crowds, I think that's something the Sun Belt has just got to be proud of, is that they have a place like that where the baseball atmosphere is as good as any place in the country. But yeah, not a fun draw to get Vandy on the other side of that. If you're hoping to get to Omaha, sometimes weird things happen. Sometimes those top 8 teams don't make it, but Vandy and Nashville, that's going to be a tough thing to get through.
SEC sending 13 teams into the regionals for it, 9 from the ACC, 8 from the Big 12, 4 from the Big 10. There's always the talk of the SEC, the Big 10, and who's more dominant in football. But I think without a question, it's SEC all day long for baseball.
Yeah. I mean, it's a geographic thing. I mean, it's why the Sun Belt is as good as they are for a quote unquote mid-major conference, as you've got a recruiting base where you can recruit guys that are playing baseball all year round. I think is what makes it tough. I'll give Marshall credit for being as good here recently as they have been in baseball, because it's not a year-round baseball place. It's there's some good baseball in West Virginia, but West WVU is usually pretty solid. But yeah, those deep South teams down your way, it's tough to beat.
That's why it's already in the mid-90s, and we're still in May.
It's not in the mid-90s here.
Yeah, so jealous. With that said, we have the NIT for basketball. We have, the bowl games where you're not necessarily contending for a national championship game, so it's kind of a consolation prize. Do we have a NIT baseball tournament on the horizon with teams like Troy, Southeastern Louisiana, kind of getting the shaft and not getting into the postseason?
Yeah, I honestly don't know what the economics for that would be. It seems like, where you do have some of these really great fan bases at mid-major conferences when it comes to baseball in the South, if you play that thing in some place I don't know, Birmingham or somewhere where you can get a lot of regional attention, I'm assuming it's the kind of thing where maybe you'd play it, 8 to 12 teams all in one location, try to do something there, sell some tickets, maybe find a TV deal. But I think it could probably work. I mean, we've seen even in sports like volleyball and stuff have these second tier tournaments. And if the third and fourth tier basketball tournaments can survive, I think, a group of the, first 8 to 12 teams out of the NCAA tournament in baseball could be an interesting, entertaining event that, at least those fan bases would pay attention to.
You have me excited because the SWAC tournament was there. MLB played there last year. Rickwood Classic in Birmingham, home of the original Birmingham Black Barons. What more could you want of having a historic field like that hosted?
And I'm just assuming a lot of the teams that would make it, that would be interested in playing that, are, Sunbelt teams, SWAC teams, Southland, even maybe an ACC team or two that, didn't get in. But, it's a pretty centralized location for your baseball powers that might want to play some extra games.
It seems like there are fans that were not very happy that Montgomery and Riverwalk Stadium, home of the Montgomery Biscuits, was once again home and host to the Sun Belt Conference baseball tournament. Is that the right venue? Because we talked the same way about Pensacola and basketball. Do we combine it? Do we move the tournament from Montgomery to Pensacola and just Pensacola is the Sun Belt Mecca?
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that. I haven't been to the baseball tournament, so it's harder for me to speak with authority on this, but I did see, some complaining, I think a little bit, especially about small crowds for those games. It's a neutral site. It's tough for, if you're ODU or Marshall, it's tough to get to Montgomery for this thing. Southern Miss games drew great. You could see crowds in the background behind the backstop for those games. But, I think that led to a lot of Southern Miss fans saying, hey, why isn't this place, someplace where, a lot of our fans would get there, where Louisiana has, great crowds. They would get there. Why are we going to Montgomery if not even a lot of Troy fans are showing up for it there? I don't know. It's hard for me to say. Like, they probably do a really good job putting on the event. The Sun Belt does a great job in Pensacola, and you hear some of the similar complaints that, it's just not very centralized. People have to travel. But I think, this last basketball tournament in Pensacola was one of the best ones they've had recently. Great atmospheres, good crowds. So it might just take some time to build it in one location, which I think is Keith Gill's kind of thoughts and strategy on the whole thing.
Hey, I know a stadium in Houston that could host it. It's indoors. It's air conditioned, major airport. That's where we should go. Or what is it, 27, 28, when the new athletics or Vegas baseball franchise, whatever they're calling themselves right now, is open. That'll be indoor arena. Great place to go. Easy to get in and out of. What do you think of those there, Shane?
Yeah, let's take it to Vegas. And that makes total sense to me. Everybody wants to play in Vegas. We could put some Sun Belt baseball there.
I mean, it's dome. It's air conditioned. There's plenty to do. There's plenty of hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Why not? Sponsored by Fun Belt Podcast, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, also on the other side, away from the baseball diamond on softball side, 52 softball players, student athletes named Academic All-District. Girls getting it done not only on the field, but in the classroom as well. Always love to see that side of things going down as well, Shane.
Yeah. And, I can't say that I am extremely well-versed in who all made it, but we'll say congrats to all of them because, we should be celebrating. We should be celebrating that. It's still, I don't necessarily do the whole student athlete thing like they require you to say at NCAA tournament events, but they are students, and we should still be celebrating the ones that are doing great in the classroom. I know some of them are leaving their schools with multiple degrees, which is impressive to me. I barely got my one.
I got two. It took me long enough, but I did get two. We have to talk a little football. There really has not been much out when it comes to the Sun Belt Conference, what the teams are doing, what they're going to look like for this upcoming year. But the over and unders for wins has already come out. Tell me what you think about some of these odds and some of these numbers. Georgia State is going to make you money if you bet on them to be the conference champions at 5,500 to 1, Shane. Is that a bet you're going to take?
That's the kind of bet I could put $1 down and just see what happens. Like, I think we'll see improvement from the Panthers this year. Second year for Del McGee, getting his system in there. I don't expect a conference championship coming out of Atlanta this time around, though.
Slightly better odds than them is ULM at 4,000. I don't think this is the year that ULM contends for a conference title. Would love to be wrong, but I don't see it happening. Interesting, though, that Marshall and Southern Miss. Marshall's at 2,800, Southern Miss at 2,200. You got to think that somebody doesn't realize that Southern Miss pretty much gobbled up Marshall and took everything that they had.
Yeah, they're counting on bettors not to realize that because, yeah, I look at Southern Miss and I feel like they've got to be one of the favorites next year, but the lines don't necessarily reflect that.
App State right in the middle of the pack at 2,000, tied with Coastal at that mark. Your odds on top three favorites, though, the Raging Cajuns at third at 525, South Alabama at 500, and James Madison at 280. Out of those, I like the Raging Cajuns the most out of that because I feel like with the quarterback they brought in, the LSU transfer, if nothing else, they have a solid quarterback play. You know they're going to have tight ends and receivers that are just on fire. What more could you really want? They're going to be able to at least outscore their opponents.
Yeah, and you talk about those other two teams. I feel like there's a little bit of question marks at the quarterback position for both of them, bringing in new guys. Not knowing, I mean, if you're James Madison, you don't know for sure if Alonzo Barnett's going to be able to play next year. And then so you got a couple transfers that are in the mix. South Alabama, you go through the whole drama, losing Gio Lopez like as spring ball ends. So, question marks at quarterback. I think there's talent both places, but it's just not really set in stone who's going to get the job, what they're going to do at quarterback. So, yeah, I kind of like the Cajuns being able to build off what they did last year, which was kind of the breakthrough season for Mike DeSormo.
On the over and under, there's a lot of kind of craziness going on with those numbers as well. App State, Arkansas State, Coastal Carolina, all at the 5.5 games. Any of those kind of strike you as a little odd?
They kind of strike me as just hedging your bets, which I guess is the name of the game if you're doing this. But, it's App State. Like, I think even with the coaching change, even if they're like, trying to quote unquote rebuild, which, do you ever rebuild in Boone? You reload, right? Even with the coaching change, I don't think they're going to be satisfied with 6 wins, even in Donald Willigan's first year. Like I feel like the Mountaineers especially have to do a little bit better than that. But maybe that is accurate where they are for their program right now. We'll just have to wait and see.
ODU also in the 5.5 club as well, along with Marshall.
Yeah, ODU seems like they're always kind of in that, like, will they get the 6th win range? Like every year, are they going to get to a bowl game? And at some point, we all love Ricky Ronnie. Like, we love the answers he gives in press conferences. We like having him on the show. He talked about some interesting things beyond football that we all love. And I think he's done a pretty good job with what he has to work with there. But, if they're not more solidly in a bowl game this year with 7 or 8 wins, I think the patience in Norfolk kind of starts to wear thin with Ricky Ronnie there too.
Does he get the one more year, considering he was a COVID casualty there when he first stepped on campus?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably bought him some time already. Like, that was a tough situation to jump into when, like, not many other schools went that route to just not play. Although it did allow him to kind of just spend some time trying to completely rebuild the roster his first year. But you also kind of sent mixed messages to teams like about how seriously you were taking football at the time. So I think it was tough, but I think, it's 2025 now. I think maybe he's already gotten his grace period a little bit when it comes to that.
The three to me, actually, that are kind of head scratchers. James Madison at 8.5. I think that they'll be another good team. I think they'll go to a bowl game. But 9 games, Shane, is that really where we are with James Madison?
I think they could be better than last year when they did win 9 games, but the schedule is significantly tougher. So that's what makes it hard to judge. And also, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, if you get the best out of, if it's Matt Sluka who wins the job at quarterback, if you get the kind of production that you got from him at Holy Cross, they could potentially be really good, but that's still a question mark. And then you got a non-conference schedule that you're at Liberty. That's a tough game, even though that could be maybe like a half and half JMU crowd there. It's still a tough place to go on the road and win. You got Washington State coming to Harrisonburg, and you got Louisville on the road. Like, you could very easily lose 3 non-conference games. You go unbeaten in a non-conference, then you're possibly talking about being like that playoff representative. But it's a tough schedule that, I think they could be better and not win as many games this year.
Georgia State 3.5. Are they really 4 games bad?
I don't know. It's a tough rebuild. You've got to play all of those, East schools. There's not going to be an easy game on the conference slate for them, but I do think they're better. I kind of am looking at Georgia State being improved, being maybe in that like 5-win range where we're waiting to see if they can go to a bowl game in year 2 for Del McGee.
I mean, the first 2 games are pretty tough there, where they travel to Ole Miss, host Memphis. You got to think in week 4 that Vanderbilt's going to be looking for revenge there as well. And then you kick off into conference play where you got to play everybody in the East. So you're playing James Madison, App State, Georgia Southern, the mystery of Coastal, and then, of course, you're closing it out with the weirdness of Old Dominion. Maybe 4 wins is right.
Yeah, it's another one of those teams where they could be significantly improved, and you don't necessarily see it in the win column because look at that non-conference schedule. That's rough. That's where you make your money if you're Georgia State football right now, but that's tough if you're trying to like get to more bowl games.
Well, Shane, short, sweet, and to the point. You notice how these episodes are nice and condensed when we don't have a third leg that gives detailed analogies of everything in life.
Yeah, who could you be talking about?
I was merely saying that we should not have a third leg, just in case.
I don't know. I do miss the guy. I think he adds a little something, a little levity to the proceedings. But we did knock this out pretty efficiently today. I will say that.
He is definitely Jay Walker approved, and that definitely gives him a big gold star in my book. So we always close out, though, with plugs, promos, and parting shots. Shane, what do you have to close us out?
I guess the parting shot will just be, a literal parting shot at our friends over in the SEC, because take a shot at them. Greg Sankey coming out of their meetings this week talking about, whether or not they should break off from the NCAA, really pushing for, even a divide amongst the Power 4 conferences where like he's knocking the ACC and Big 12 for not wanting to give up playoff spots to them. I don't know if we're going to see the big break soon that people have been talking about where it really becomes a Power 2 or it becomes like a super league without things, but I don't know. The SEC, at some point, you got to kind of start to play the game with everybody else. I know you're better. I'm not arguing you're not a better football conference than everybody else, but don't you need other teams to play? Don't you need other leagues to play? Don't you need college football on the whole to survive? If you don't, then just get out already. Take your Big Ten and the SEC, start something else. If you want to be all about just a TV show and TV ratings and everything else. There's a lot of people in college football who just want to bring their fans to campus 6 times a year. They want to have events. They want to have football games as part of their college atmosphere. And, if you play on TV every once in a while, that's a bonus. Like, if getting the absolute best and most money for Alabama and Penn State because they do draw ratings is the best move for your conference, then fine. But let's let everybody else just survive and move on with what we like about football, because at this point, I would be happy to see the SEC and Big Ten move away if they can't just work with everybody else.
Screw those guys. We don't need them. Actually, we do. Keep giving us over $2 million to play a body bag game. My parting shot is going to be the same guys that have screwed college athletics that you were just talking about, Shane, are now looking to run for governor, as well as being implied that they could be the next senator from the great state of Alabama. Tommy Tuberville has announced his candidacy. Senator Tommy Tuberville has announced his candidacy for the governor of Alabama. His replacement that would be in a special election, potentially Bruce Pearl. What have we gotten ourselves into? What kind of dimension is this? And I can only imagine that we're now back in like the 50s where the crazy actor Ronald Reagan has decided to step into the politics and get into the political arena.
I don't know. I don't like to get political all that often, but Tommy Tuberville as a politician has not impressed me a lot. And, maybe it's part of what he did as a coach too, that he didn't seem to be the most reputable guy around. So it has nothing to do with him being a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. I just wouldn't be extremely happy if he was my governor, if I was a citizen of Alabama. And the other thing is, I know he won a Senate seat, but do you really win governorship in Alabama if you're the rival of the Crimson Tide? Seems like they kind of run things there. And Bruce Pearl, don't get into politics. Stay in basketball. You're fun to have around college basketball. So let's not go to the Senate quite yet. You got a few more good years coaching left. Let's stay out of politics.
No, I mean, he's already driven one program to have damn near death penalty and was indicted federally. Sounds like a perfect politician to me.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.